they've been decimated. But if we didn't do what we're doing right now, you would have had a nuclear war, and they would have taken out many countries, because you know what? They're sick people. They're mentally ill, sick people. They're angry. They're crazy. They're sick.
Morning glory and evening grace, America. President Trump summing up the reason we are at war with Iran. I'm joined by Senator Joni Ernst of Iowa. She's on Homeland Security, Ag Committee, other committee. Senator Ernst, do you agree with President Trump's description of our enemy?
Yes, absolutely. I think that if we had not moved forward with this, I do believe that Iran would be targeting us, Israel, and our other partners abroad. No doubt about it. They have nefarious activities in mind, and fortunately, we've been able to cut them off at the knees.
So, Senator, I'm going to come to Homeland Security and the committee on which you sit in just a moment. But as the perspective of a veteran, and you know how expensive the munitions are that we are firing off in great numbers, President says we've got enough, but it's still our stockpile. Do we need a supplemental? Do we ought to use reconciliation a second time to focus on the Department of Defense? Or do we wait for the order that would be regular order were we not in a war?
Well, Hugh, I think everything is on the table right now, and we have no idea how long this engagement will go, Operation Epic Fury. It could last a matter of weeks. It could extend longer, but what we have to recognize is that whatever it takes to end the threat of Iran needs to be on the table. So whether it's reconciliation, whether it's additional supplemental appropriations, whether it's going through regular order, we need to be discussing all of those opportunities right now and not wait until the last minute. We know that munitions are important. How can we continue to manufacture and push production of those munitions while we're expending them in the Middle East? So, Hugh, a lot for us to do and a lot to be determined in the upcoming weeks.
Do you do that in the conference, Senator, or you do that only in committee and one-on-ones meetings, or do you all gather as a group and say, okay, we're going to go with reconciliation?
Well, we do this through the committees. One, we'll need to have estimates coming from the Department of War, and two, then we take a look at it through whether it's appropriations or whether it's through the Armed Services Committee. But then we will gather as a conference as well and decide what is the appropriate way to move forward using the information that is gathered by those committees.
All right, now I want to switch to Homeland Security. And again, you are on the Homeland Security Committee, which is without funding right now. It's operating on a contingency basis. It's unbelievable that Democrats are not funding this at a time when we can certainly expect Iran, its proxies, and all of its sympathizers in the United States to try and wreak havoc on the United States. Has there been anyone on the other side to say, okay, we're going to throw in with the country right now rather than our talking points?
Well, Hugh, you mean other than Senator John Fetterman, right?
Yes.
Because
yes.
He has been with us through thick and thin. But I would say that the Democrats are recognizing that they're in a very ugly position right now. And as we have the threats from Iran, what they'll continue to do is deflect the blame and say, well, this is all on President Trump for starting this war. But what I would remind them is, regardless, Iran was planning to likely strike us, strike Israel, put Americans in jeopardy. That doesn't matter. We have threats here in the homeland that need to be nullified. So that means funding our Department of Homeland Security and making sure that those officers, those people that work for the department, have the skills and ability and are receiving the appropriate pay to continue doing their jobs. One thing that we have brought up is the fact that DHS is in charge of cybersecurity for our homeland. And right now, we are not funding those methods to protect our businesses, our governmental structures here at the homeland. So Democrats, beware. You know, if they are choosing not to fund it, something happens to us, it is all on their shoulders.
This is a question, Senator, not a statement. I think it is the case that even if we designate a Homeland Security employee as essential and they come to work without pay. We can't do that to contractors, and the contractors don't work in the lapse of appropriations. Am I correct about that?
You are absolutely correct, Hugh. So contractors, they would not be obligated unless their contracts have been paid. But for those that are deemed as essential, yes, they do show up at work. But look at our TSA and what they have gone through. Look at others that have, been exploited basically by this process and showing up. The last time we went through a government shutdown, 40 plus days, your heart's not in it when you have a government that's not paying you and yet requiring you to work. So how many things when we talk about Department of Homeland Security, how many things when you are tired because you are working a second job to pay the bills, how many things are going to slip through the cracks because you were tired, you were overworked, you were disheartened by the fact that your elected representatives don't feel that you are important enough to pay.
So, Senator, I think Leader Thune is doing a marvelous job. Has he arranged for floor votes on DHS funding?
Not yet, Hugh, and he is doing a fabulous job. So we got a very brief update at lunch today in our Republican Senators Conference meeting, but the Democrats right now are just not yielding. So a lot of these discussions will have to be done between the Democratic leadership and the White House. They have to come to a consensus. I think the pressure will continue to build as we see DHS continue to be shut down during a time of international crisis, when we know that Iranians have sleeper cells throughout the United States, when we know that they are perpetrating activities against former administration officials. So let's just put the political ideologies and shenanigans aside. Let's make sure we get DHS funded. It's not just about CBP, ICE, and so forth. It's also about the Coast Guard, TSA, and others that are protecting our homeland.
Senator Joni Ernst, always good to talk to you. Follow her on
Thank
Joni
you.
Ernst on X. Thank you, Senator. Got a lot of people to thank today, but I want to begin by telling you that I am in the Relief Factor studio and I cannot lift my arm, and I'm using a Relief Factor in order to get rid of that, but it's the dreaded overhead bin effect, and I did it over the weekend. So you see me taking it on the Salem News Channel. There it is. I carry in curcumin as Veritron. I can lift my arm that high. I can't reach a cup, and I did it on the overhead bin, and I do it almost like every third time I get on an airplane. I get on a lot of airplanes, and it's my own doggone fault because I'm not careful enough, but I should know better. But luckily I have Relief Factor, and I'll take it a couple of times today, and I'm off tomorrow. Mark Davis will be in. He'll tell you the wonders of Relief Factor because he takes it too. But I'm here to tell you, give it a try, 1-800, the number 4, and the word relief, 1-800-4-RELIEF. And you will experience what I do every day, which is no after effects of climbing the implacable hill, no after effects of going dawn to dusk and late beyond. I just love the product because it works, and it's going to work on the lat eventually. Just give it a couple of days. 1-800, the number 4, and the word relief, or head to relieffactor.com. Get the starter pack, $19.95. That's less than $1 a day. Also, for those of you who are watching on the Salem News Channel, you'll be able to see the array of choices you have from besthotgrill.com. But if you're listening in your car right now, I have to try and describe you. Besthotgrill.com has got so many products that you want to go and examine. They, of course, have an array of Solaire infrared grills, and they have got a great number of different kinds of grills, and you can always try it before you buy it with the Solaire demo rental program. You also get, by the way, a chance to have UPS pick it up. Solaire makes it easy. You receive a coupon for $47 off any Solaire infrared grill when you get the Solaire rental program going. It will convince you. You'll never return it. You'll keep it. You'll absolutely keep it. Everybody I know with a Solaire grill loves the Solaire grill. All you have to do is go to besthotgrill.com and find the Solaire demo rental program. That's besthotgrill.com. $47 off if you do the try it before you buy it program. And UPS delivers it. You don't have to worry about a thing. It's really a no-brain move. You don't have to have a brain. you can be a left-wing Democrat, and you'll still try a Solaire infrared grill, because the demo program simply doesn't get any better than that. BestHotGrill.com. Joined by the Ruthless Podcast, John Ashbrook. He is their White House correspondent. John, the Ruthless Podcast always has the vegetables, and it's got the fun. I want to get to the vegetables, but can I begin with the fun with you?
Please.
You are the White House correspondent. Therefore, I assume you're going to the White House Correspondents Association dinner, and maybe you'll get a +1, but what about the other fellas?
Well, here's the thing, Hugh. I have not been to that dinner in quite some time, and it's sort of a painful experience if you're a Republican, because it's surrounded by Democrats. It's all Democrat journos. Now that our great president has decided to attend this year, you know that the jokes are going to be good. You know the show is going to be good. You know it's worth attending. And so this year, for the first time in many years, I plan on joining, and I think my co-hosts are going to go too.
Okay, I've been once. I went when that disgusting comic assailed now Governor Sarah Huckabee, and I said, I'll never come back to this disgusting display of left-wing activism. But you might be right. But I'm curious, with the fellas on hand, you're going to be like the stars. Do you get a +1? Are you bringing your wives? Have they begun to get into the dress thing? Because it's a big deal for spouses.
Well, I don't know if my wife is going to want to go. I don't know that she's going to want to cavort with all of these journos. My guess is she won't want to, but I would insist that she attend with me and sort of bear the burden of being around all these people together.
Now, you're going to be with Smug, and he knows that you know all the journos and you're buddies with them. So is he going to be at your side whispering names in your ear that this is that guy and this is that gal? Who's your Sherpa?
Here's the thing. Smug is a secret journo. He will never let you know how many people reach out to him with source material and how he acts on it. To be honest with you, Hugh, he is the real journo of this show. I know that I get the blame, I get the slings and arrows, but to be honest with you, Smug is the true journo of the variety program.
Is
and we're
he
all better for it.
Is he a sleeper journo? Is he like the Mossad of journalists in your number?
Without a doubt. Without a doubt.
So.
Without a doubt. Nobody gets more incoming from Democrat consultants than Smug. They all send their material to him hoping that he will dunk on their opponents within the Democrat Party, and he does it very, very well. And so
okay, that's a headline. Going to run with that. Smug is a sleeper journal. Okay, let's go to the vegetable, the serious stuff, the war. Wars never go well when American troops are lost, and we've had KIA and wounded already, so they're not going well, but they're actually moving in a decisive way, I think, towards victory. What is the feeling inside the Ruthless studio?
Well, we're all waiting to hear what comes out of this Senate briefing that may be occurring right now as we speak. Trump top administration officials letting everybody in the Senate know what the stakes are on the ground, what accomplishments have been made on the ground, and it sure seems like those accomplishments are many. It seems, if the reports are to be believed, that the missile capabilities of Iran have been significantly degraded in the last 72 hours, that their Navy is maybe completely gone. And, I heard General Jack Keane just a little bit ago talking about how the Iranian Navy was trying to set mines in the Strait of Hormuz. If our Navy has taken them out and prevented them from doing something like that, it is quite an accomplishment. And, they are moving from this missile strategy to a little bit more of a drone strategy, which you've probably been following. Hugh, you know a whole lot more about this than any of us at the Variety program because you've been watching it, reporting on it for quite some time. But the ability of these drones to cause the destruction that the missiles they can't do as much as damage as these missiles can do. And we had Brian Hook on the show this morning, a guy
very
who
good
I
choice.
know you're familiar with. Very smart guy, very, very smart. And he talks about Iran in terms of the proxies they use to cause problems in the Middle East and elsewhere, the missile program that they've continued to develop even after last summer, and then the nuclear program that they have continued to develop even after last summer. And it sure as hell seems like our military is just degrading every single one of those things by the hour.
Now, John, you and Holmes are veterans of the Senate and the very arcane rules of the Senate. I love when you guys get into the tall grass and explain this. I have a very simple question. I'm a simple man. Reconciliation only takes 50 votes. We need to build Golden Dome yesterday, and we need to replenish our munitions today. Could not a reconciliation, because it's a spending bill, move fairly quickly to plus up the Defense Department budget to make good what we've expended and to accelerate what we need, which is Golden Dome?
You know, you raise an interesting point here, Hugh. I would have told you before this operation in Iran that a reconciliation bill wasn't possible in the House and Senate because there are so many House members who don't want reconciliation because they come from rural states and they don't actually love all of the trade policies out of this administration. However, if it is something that is singularly focused on helping our men and women in uniform win this fight in Iran, that's a very, very different subject. And it might be the pathway. I'm sure that's something they're talking about here at this meeting in the Senate with Secretary Hegseth and Secretary Rubio and all of the Republicans in the Senate. I know that every single one of them is interested in seeing our operation succeed. And I've already heard the senator from Mississippi talk about maybe the need for a supplemental. We'll see how that.
Good for
stuff
Roger
plays out.
Wicker. Good for Wicker.
Roger Wicker. Thank you. We'll see how that stuff plays out here in the coming weeks and their path toward daylight and what that best path might be. But I don't think anything's off the table in supporting this effort.
Yeah, I think if they came in, especially on Golden Dome, we've seen these missiles, we've seen these drones, we've seen the shattering, devastating impacts of impact. If we build the Golden Dome, the more we build of it, the faster we build of it. You build it in the heartland, you build it in every state, you build it around every shipyard. It's a jobs program, it's a technology program, it's a forcing technology. And if it's clean, I think your emphasis was on clean, nothing else, just supporting the war and the defense of the country, I think you can get majorities in both houses.
Yeah, I mean, you'd like to think so. It's the sort of protection that our country deserves. And if the technology exists, why in the world do we not have it? There's one other thing, Hugh, that's sort of hanging out over Congress right now, and that's the shutdown of the Department of Homeland Security. And you remember as well as I do that this is a department that was created after 9/11, after we were attacked on our own homeland, specifically to protect the people who are here from foreign threats. We know that during the 4 years of the Biden administration that there are terrorists who are in our country. They need to fund the Department of Homeland Security right now.
Right now, John Ashbrook, member of the Ruthless Podcast and revealer of the true identity of Comfortably Smug as a journo, thank you for joining me. A drone has struck the U.S. consulate in Dubai. Earlier today, one struck the Saudi Arabian consulate. No word on casualties yet. 6 American troops have been killed in the war thus far. More than 900 people are known dead as a result of the war. We'll keep updating that figure. The Israelis and the United States, one or the other or both, struck the gathering of vote counters for the new supreme leader, a job I really wouldn't want if I were an Iranian cleric, but they're going to come up with somebody. They're meeting by Zoom now, and absentee balloting is now their new. They're like the House of Representatives. They're not going to show up to work, and I'm not really sure who wants the job. I'll bring you headlines as they come. Checking the markets, brought to you by andrewandtodd.com. It's a down day on Wall Street, and I expect it will continue for as long as the war continues. There will be choppy days ahead and good days ahead, but I'm not really worried because Iran simply can't win this war. Dow down about 0.71%, the S&P off 0.86%, the NASDAQ off about 1 point. Gold is at 5,137. Crude oil is at $73 a barrel. And that's not out of line with what people expected with the war in the Middle East. The 10-year Treasury is at 4.060, which means you might be able to get a mortgage in the 5% range, high fives. You won't know till you call, 888-888-1172. That's the phone number for andrewandtodd.com, 888-888-1172. They do all sorts of mortgages. They have lent money to thousands of my listeners, to the fetching Mrs. Hewitt and I when we moved back to the Beltway, to Dwayne, people throughout the Salem company. I think if you're watching on Salem News or channel, or you're listening on the Salem Radio Network or any of our great affiliates, and you're thinking about buying a house or refinancing the house that you have, do not call anyone before you call Andrew Del Rey and Todd Avakian. They are with Union Home Mortgage. They are the bankers. They underwrite the loan themselves. They approve it. They give you the pre-approval letter. You walk in, you make your offer, you put your letter down and say, I am approved for X $100,000 or $50,000, whatever it takes. And then you're at the top of the line, not the back of the line. You're not going to do a contingency. You're going to say, I just want to buy it. Here's how much I'll put down. Here's my loan. It's been approved. You shoot to the front of the long line out the door, people who want to buy the house at the perfect house for you. Don't get left behind. Call Andrew and Todd today, 888-888-1172. If you are a veteran, they do VA loans, no money down. If you're a first-time home buyer and you only want to put 5% down, they do those loans as well. And if you are a senior citizen, you are over 62 years old and you're living in your primary residence, but you want to get some money out, but you don't want to make a mortgage payment, that's andrewandtodd.com. They'll walk you through it, 888-888-1172. May I also tell you it's Lent, and some of you were wondering yesterday when I did not kick off my Food for the Poor campaign, which I do every Lent. I ask people who listen and who observe Lent to make a donation to Food for the Poor and their services throughout Central America and the islands of the Caribbean for the lost and the least, emphasizing water and food. It's beans and clean water. It's nothing fancy. They've been doing it for decades. They're very good at it. And I didn't kick it off yesterday because of the war. And you don't spit in the wind. You don't divert from the major story. But I thought about it overnight, and the banner's up at HughHewitt.com. And I'll tell you more about it next week. But a lot of you have made it part of your Lenten observance to make a donation, $10, $15, $50, $100. It is almsgiving. It is part of the traditional Lenten practice for Christians to give alms. Food for the Poor knows how to spend the money. They've been doing it for years, so I'd encourage you to please head over to HughHewitt.com, find the banner, and be generous at the top. Give it a second to load. Steelers fans always confuses you. Here is President Trump today answering the charge that Israel forced his hand, cut number 2.
Mr. President, did Israel force your hand to launch these strikes against Iran? Did Netanyahu pull the United States into this war?
No, I might have forced their hand. You see, we were having negotiations with these lunatics, and it was my opinion that they were going to attack first. They were going to attack. If we didn't do it, they were going to attack first. I felt strongly about that. And we have great negotiators, great people, people that do this very successfully and have done it all their lives very successful. And based on the way the negotiation was going, I think they were going to attack first. And I didn't want that to happen. So if anything, I might have forced Israel's hand. But Israel was ready and we were ready, and we've had a very, very powerful impact.
He's right, and they did, and I don't think anybody forced anybody. I think allies cooperated in the construction of a war plan that's thus far proving to be extraordinarily successful.
I think the president did the right thing. 6, 7 presidents have talked about it. He did it. We don't know what's going to happen, but I would call it a success, if for no other reason but that Khamenei is dead. He, the Ayatollah won the coin toss, and he elected to receive. And
welcome back, America. That's the one and only John Kennedy, Senator from Louisiana, talking to Josh Holmes on the Ruthless Podcast. I'm joined by the one and only David M. Drucker of the Dispatch. David, I have not even paid attention to one poll because polling at the beginning of war is nothing like the end of polling at the end of a war or 5 years after whatever is considered to be end of the war. Are you paying any attention to it?
Well, I'm paying attention to it because I'm trying to track public opinion and keep my eyes and ears open. But I agree with you that initial polling can be deceiving. And we've talked about this before, Hugh. Anytime there's a major terrorist attack, a major natural disaster, a major anything, you like to let the dust settle a little bit, right? So at least you're going to wait for the polling to be taken the week after things happen or begin, and then that polling doesn't even come out for another week because they got to go through the numbers. And war in particular, and this is not just military action here. This is a war. It's ongoing. Things change. Things go this way and that way, and so it may be a little harder to poll for the foreseeable future. But I don't think the data is altogether necessarily wrong or not useful. And it depends on what kind of data we're dealing with. Focus groups in particular, I think, might be very helpful in understanding public opinion as time goes on from week to week.
Now, the postings on X posit that the United States has unleashed its B-52 fleet. These are heavy bombers with extraordinary loads, payloads. They're not fighter bombers that strike 1, 2, 5 targets. They can strike numerous. They can blow craters in the ground. At what point do you expect a regime to cry uncle? Now, the Ayatollahs in Afghanistan never cried uncle. They retreated to the mountains. But there's a government here. Tehran is not Afghanistan.
Yeah, well, they're not Afghanistan, but they're kind of Afghanistan. I mean, these guys are a bunch of murderous zealots. They've been going at it for 50 years, and they've never taken the easy off ramp, even though they actually have a population that would like to be a part of the West. Maybe not all of the population, but probably at least half, if not a majority, right? And they never take the off ramp because they don't want the off ramp. So I don't know that there's going to be any. I mean, we're just kind of speculating here, but I don't see evidence going back these 50 years that they're going to cry uncle and all of a sudden change their behavior. They could have done this without this, and they wouldn't do it. And they've never been willing to do it. And I kind of look at the regime in Iran and everybody associated with governing Iran, the same way I've looked at Hamas and Hezbollah. Every time you give these groups, the PLO, the Palestinian Liberation Authority under Yasser Arafat, they never want an off-ramp because they don't want to give up the war because they're extremely zealous. They hate America. They're anti-Semitic, and to give up the war would give up both their authority, such that it is, but also the whole reason for their existence.
David, you're old enough to remember when the wall fell, and first Stasi melted away, and then General Yaroslavsky in Poland melted away. In Romania, Ceausescu ended up upside down and dead, hung by the cross. I mean, sometimes very public figures get killed, but if you want a regime to dissolve, you just wait about a month and then it starts to dissolve. I think it's way too early to tell if it's going to dissolve.
I don't know that it dissolves. I think it can be eliminated, but I think that's why the president has said this thing could last for weeks, because that's what it's going to take, and it may take even longer than that. I mean, the thing about Eastern Europe, Hugh, and I'm not telling you something you don't know, but the Eastern Europeans, the Europeans behind the Iron Curtain during the Cold War, wanted to be a part of the West. They originally were of the West, and culturally and politically, they fit with Western Europe. They fit with the United States, and they knew what was taken away from them, and there was no legitimacy to the governments that popped up in that part of Europe after World War II. The Iranian regime does have a bit of legitimacy because obviously it was brought about in part by a popular revolution, and it's a little more complicated than that. But I'm also old enough to remember when those revolutionaries took American hostages and kept them for over a year until Reagan, was about to win that election or won that election. And so this has been ingrained in Iranian society. There has been more and more popular uprisings as the years went on. This regime has resorted to more and more brutal tactics as the years went on. But I just
Yeah,
think this is a
they
much
don't have any
stronger problem.
guns. They don't have any guns. And I know about as
Yeah.
much about Iran as I do about Malaysia, but I've been to Malaysia. I haven't been to Iran. And
Yeah.
all I know from Iran, I learned watching an hour of Tehran on Apple TV last night. That's not quite true. But it's a modern country. It's a very
Great show.
sophisticated, modern, evidently, and Admiral Montgomery turned me on to it, and it is riveting. But I'll tell you this, David, I can't imagine anyone wants to live in a republic of fear. That's what it is. It's a republic of fear. Does anyone want to live that way?
Well, we know that so many Iranians do not. It's one of the reasons why so many Iranian expats that live in the United States have been dancing in the streets, literally, regardless of whatever they think of Donald Trump. And so no, so many Iranians don't. But the regime still has roots, and that's why you can't just cut off the leaves. I mean, you got to go to the roots, and I think it's going to take a lot of effort on our part.
I agree. David M. Drucker, follow him on X at David M. Drucker. Read him in the Dispatch every day. Thank you, David. I want to remind everyone over at HughHewitt.com, the banner for Food for the Poor is at the top of HughHewitt.com. Many of you expected me to kick it off yesterday with a big presentation of what Food for the Poor does. Look, I've been doing a drive for them during Lent for 25 years. They know what they're doing for the lost and the least in the Caribbean and Central America. They build wells, they build food outlets, they work with partner churches, they can be trusted. Every donation, we can walk and chew gum at the same time. We can cover the war and be generous during Lent to people who really need it. In the season of almsgiving, this is a place to give your alms. The banner for Food for the Poor is at the top of HughHewitt.com. Thank you. I hope you're watching on the Salem News Channel so you can watch this clip of President Trump in the Oval earlier today with German Chancellor Merz.
Something had to be done. And it's been 47 years. They've been killing people all over the world for a long time. They were the kings and fathers of the roadside bomb. Soleimani, we killed him last term. If we didn't, I think it might be a different story today. They would have been much stronger and smarter than they are. But they did the roadside bombs. 95% of the people lost their legs, arms, had their face wiped out, just wiped out. I've seen some young people that it's so sad to watch. And that was almost all, 95% comes from Iran and with Soleimani. Soleimani loved it, his favorite weapon. He loved the roadside bomb. And when you see people walking around with no legs and no arms and a face that's been blown to hell, these people, what they have to go and the way they have to live, this is Iran. When you look at the barracks, the famous barracks, when you look at the hostages, when you look at a lot of hostages, when you look at all of the problems, they were really a purveyor of terror all over the world for many, many years. And it's something that had to be done. And I believe that if we didn't,
Had to be done.
Congress,
it had to be done. Trump had the courage to do it. Good for him. Good for Netanyahu. You know what also has to be done for your own personal financial future is check your cell bill. You've got some cell phone carrier. Mine is consumercellular.com. They're a sponsor of the show. I encourage you to call them, 1-800-411-4454, 1-800-411-4454, and compare, 1-800-411-4454. They have a special deal for users of cell phones who are 50 years and older. They know you don't need unlimited data, but you might want unlimited data. All right? You might need 5 gigs. You might need 10 gigs. You might get, 12 months of cell phone bills out and see that you've only used 5 gigs of data a month for the last 12 months. You might buy a really cheap plan. But maybe you just want the security of unlimited plan. Guess what they will give you? 1 line of unlimited talk, text, and data for $35 per month, plus an additional $5 off per month for the first 5 months when you use my promo code HUGH25. Now, anyone who wants to make the switch, you can be any age for as many phones as you want. It takes about 20 minutes to make the switch. You can be any age. All you have to do is remember my code HUGH25. But if you're 50 years or older, all right, if you're 50 years or older, Call them today, 1-800-411-4454, and say, I want the unlimited plan, unlimited data, $35 a month. Hewitt said so, $35 a month, and I get an extra $5 off a month for the first 5 months, right? The code's Hewitt25, and they'll say yes. You'll be dealing with a customer service representative right here in the good old US of A. Takes about 20 minutes. Keep your number, keep your data, keep it all. Just change your cell phone carrier to consumercellular.com. 1-800-411-4454. My guest is Abe Greenwald, executive editor of Commentary Podcast and almost a daily participant in the Commentary Podcast. And I told John Podhoretz yesterday, but I'll tell you, Abe, thank you for working overtime on Saturday and Sunday, because there was a demand signal for smart conversation about the war with Iran, and very few people decided to step up, but Commentary did, and it's a great recommendation for the podcast. You'll show up when people want to talk about it. Hey, but left me, though, along with yesterday and today's podcast, which I've listened to, with this question. Happy Purim, by the way, and I hope you're celebrating later and not right, that you're not already begun celebrating, so that we get the real Abe Greenwald. What is the purpose of the Commentary Podcast in a war with Iran?
Oh, well, it's an interesting question, because John was the impetus for having the emergency podcasts over the weekend, and he often is. And the truth is, Commentary, having always been a magazine that seeks to explain the Jews to America and America to the Jews, and stand as a witness to anti-Semitism and defend the right of the State of Israel to exist. After October 7th, we had a sort of informal conversation. I had an informal conversation with John where he sort of articulated this kind of revelation. I mean, it makes perfect sense that this is what we are here for. I mean, the magazine exists for just these such moments, to make sense of these moments, explain the truth as we see it, there can be through the sort of becalming effects of modern American history and its history with the Jews, long stretches of relative calm and ease for the Jewish people in this country. But when there is a moment of crisis in the Middle East, when there is a war launched by Iranian proxies on the Jewish state, if we don't come to life at those moments, then we are shirking our duty. So the same goes for a moment such as the launch of this war, because Commentary has been advocating for either the bombing of Iran's nuclear program or regime change in Iran for a good 20 years. So this is, if we are not the ones to speak up and help people make sense of this now, then no one is.
And I think that's well put. Because I was able to download the Commentary Podcast before Saturday, I got on an airplane and the wireless didn't work on the plane, so it's all I had, so I got to listen to it twice. I decided that my understanding of your mission is to defend the West. And that means defending Israel, the Greeks, the Romans, the Brits, and the United States of America, as well as our allies and those who are semi-dependent upon us and headed in our direction. And you do that very well. And right now the West is under attack by Iran directly, by Chicoms directly, by Russia directly, but by a lot of fringe people in the United States, but also how various actors figure within it. And I think Trump's basic instinct, someone told me Nixon got there by intellect and Trump gets there by instinct, is to defend the West. I don't even know if he could explain what defending the West is, but I think you folks are doing that every day by discussion and historical analysis. I think I cannot overstate how valuable it is to have. It's not a news program. It's a discussion program. It's what Buckley used to do on Firing Line, and it doesn't exist anywhere anymore. NRO defends the West in Catholicism, and Commentary defends the West in Judaism, and other people defend the West. There are other great podcasts. But what do you think of that mission statement? Defend the West and the Jews.
Oh, 100%. I was not listing every pillar of our sort of mission, defending the West and defending the United States in particular, and bringing to light that the best of Western thought and Western policy and Western history has created. That is also very much a part of our mission, and really to also make an ongoing argument that this miraculous story of the West, of the United States, which is the greatest creation, human endeavor on the planet, that the Jews are an integral, necessary part of this story.
And that leads me to today's podcast, where you were talking about, was the threat from Iran imminent or not? It does not make a lick of difference to me, because Iran, ever since they dropped the veil on January 8th and 9th and massacred 35,000 of their own people, they cannot coexist with the West. That one of them has to win. The West or Iran has to win. We can have some weak sisters like England and Spain, and I'm not sure what Turkey is doing right now, but Iran is a malevolent, evil force. I'm not even sure the CCP is as dangerous to the West as Iran is, because if they had gotten nukes, or even dirty nukes, they would have done with them what they're doing with their ballistic missiles right now. They are a rabid dog. They have to be put down.
Yeah, interestingly, Trump spoke in terms very similar to that today. He described the regime as evil. This harks back to the George W. Bush years and the description of the axis of evil, and of course, before that, talk of Russia as an evil empire. This is not the kind of language that we are used to hearing from Trump, really. Name calling, yes. Moral framing of other regimes in absolute terms, that's something different. This is
not so much.
The opposite of transactional.
Yes, not so much.
Right.
So, given that he's gone down that way, how much of your time is going to be spent looking ahead to 2028? Because it's really a question of party now. I don't know who the nominees are going to be, but I look at the line from the State of the Union, these people are crazy, is maybe the best distillation of Donald Trump ever. And his view of them, like, what's wrong with you people? I'm never going to do a deal with you people. And it's very transactional. Just, you're crazy. And I think the Democratic Party has a mind virus.
Oh, for sure. And well, I don't want to say the whole Democratic Party. Some of the Democratic Party is just simply scared to death of the far left, which makes them very weak, which is, that's not a compliment. I don't think they're necessarily crazy. Some of them are crazy, or, in colloquial terms, crazy. And we should say, as regards the current moment, when you have a far left, including some lawmakers who have been out holding placards and chanting slogans that are authored by the Iranian regime's terrorist proxies, this is their having declared themselves on the side of the regime. They're crazy in that, and on a great many other issues. And it's part of why, when Trump first came to office, what he called his common sense agenda, I think a common sense revolution, rather, I think very aptly, was as popular as it was. The country as a whole, you didn't have to be a far right winger to look at what the far left program and how it was instituted by liberals and the liberal establishment. You didn't have to be a fire-breathing far right winger to say, yeah, this is a little crazy.
All right, so last question. When we look over at the left and we see what we see, and then we see on the horseshoe end some very troubling rhetoric, especially the anti-Semitic stuff that comes from a variety of sources. We'll use Nick Fuentes and those adjacent to him. what's more dangerous? I don't think the wackos on the right are that dangerous because they're never going to have power. And I don't think that anyone who gets elected with their votes is going to rule with them anyway. But I do think the far left in America is dangerous. What is the priority, Abe, in your view? 1 minute.
It's a very tough question because, in some sense, I have come to expect the anti-Semitism of the far left. So to me, that's a sort of constant. And I have had been leaning on the hope, the anchor that is the post-Buckley right as a block of sanity that's there to fight against the anti-Semitism of the left. The scary thing about the rise of any sort of anti-Semitic right is that it renders both parties potentially dangerous to the Jews, and that's a new phenomenon.
It is new. I'm counting on people like Senator Cotton and those adjacent to him to keep the GOP anchored in common sense and pro-American, pro-Western ideal. Abe Greenwald, follow him on X at Abe Greenwald. Read his newsletter every morning, which you can sign up for at commentary.com. Dr. Michael Oren was Israel's ambassador to the United States for a long time. He's authored so many books, including Ally, which are relevant right now. Dr. Oren, as the war rages in Israel, how are you, your family, and your friends faring?
Well, I just got out of the safe room now. We had a missile attack about 40 seconds ago. And it's been a busy night. It's not the busiest night. Yesterday we had about 30 missile attacks and that we had to go into the safe room, our bomb shelters. We've had about 6 or 7 today. So I don't know whether this means that Iran is focusing more on other targets in the Middle East. We can talk about what that means, and on American military assets in the Middle East, ships and bases. Other than Iran doesn't get anything out of shooting at us other than making them feel good. It's an ideological feel-good movement, because we're not going to bolt. We're not going to put pressure on President Trump to end the war, right? We're not going to break. So, they're going to try to shoot at what will give them the biggest, forgive the expression, the bang for the buck, which is trying to increase American casualties in this war, trying to put pressure on various Middle Eastern governments to put pressure in turn on the American president to cease fire. It ain't going to work.
So, Dr. Oren, I asked this of Aviv earlier, but you're the real historian, so I'm going to ask it of you. In 1950 on Wake Island, General MacArthur met with Harry Truman to congratulate each other on how well the Korean War was going. Already, Mao had sent 100,000 plus volunteers over the Yalu, and all of a sudden we're in a 3. Yeah. Is it possible that Turkey comes in if, in fact, Israel unleashes the Kurds of Iraq into Kurdistan in Iran?
I hadn't thought of that. I can't believe it. On what side of this war is Turkey supposed to come in? That's what I would ask you, Hugh. On Iran's side, I think it's highly unlikely. Right now,
on their
we are
own
witnessing.
side, on the side of the Ottoman Empire, because this guy's nuts. Erdogan's nuts.
Oh, they could attack the Kurds. They could attack the Kurds. They could easily do that. That I can understand. And it's going to be, again, one of those Dirty Harry moments. It's going to be pull the trigger, make my day. It's what Hezbollah has done for us in Lebanon now. But what we are witnessing now is the discarding of just about every assumption about the Middle East, about the conflict that we've held for close to 80 years.
Yeah.
We're in a situation tonight where the Lebanese government is condemning Hezbollah for shooting at Israel. We're at a situation tonight where Qatar, the presumptive ally of Iran, may be actually bombing Iran, together with Israel, by the way, together with Israel. It's a total realignment of this region. It is the resurfacing of ancient hatreds, because the Arabs hate the Persians and the Sunnis hate the Shiites. And with Modi's visit last week, which was quite extraordinary, on the eve of this war, the democratically elected leader of the largest nation on earth comes to visit Israel and does nothing but swear, allegiance and support for us. We could see the emergence of a Pax Americana strategic arc that extends from the Mediterranean Ocean, not far from where I'm sitting, to the banks of the Ganges. It is totally transformative moment.
Yeah, I'm so glad you brought this up.
I want to quote my taxi driver today, who said that we're not living during historical times; we're living during biblical times.
Well said by him. Maybe that's the title of your next book. Here's my question.
Yeah.
You and I lived through 1989 when, out of nowhere, the Warsaw Pact collapsed and the entire world was rearranged. Are we in such a moment again? Because I didn't think we'd get two in my lifetime.
I know we're 2 for 2 here. It apparently is that way, and nobody knows how. We all know how wars start. We don't know how they end. We don't know. And this war was the product of multiple miscalculations by just about everybody. Israel on October 6, 2027, the Palestinians on October 7th, 2023, sorry. And miscalculations after miscalculations, the most recent by the Iranians in thinking that if they bomb Arabs and they bomb Cyprus, they're going to get more pressure on Trump to stop the war. When just the opposite, they've got a lot of more people bombing them tonight. We don't know, but it looks like everything's going to be shaken up. It's a Caron moment where the balls go flying in different pockets, and the billiard balls, and we don't know. But it is remarkable to see this.
The fundamental question is the fundamentalist question. That is, Islam has veered for 100 years into Wahhabism and Shia extremism. Can MBZ, working with MBS, patch it up and bring the Arab Muslim world into a reformed, modern Islam?
It's possible. There's still going to be radical Islam. Listen, the crazy thing is my son is visiting the United States now, not under fire in Israel. But last week he was in Austin, Texas. Wakes up to find himself, in the middle of a massive police investigation. Happened right down the street from him. You can't make this up.
No,
right?
you can't.
So Islamic extremism is still with us, and will continue to be with it. It just won't have a state behind it the way it did. And Nazism is still with us too, but they're a lot less dangerous because they don't have Nazi Germany behind them. And so, Islamicists and Islamist terrorists may be less dangerous now that they don't have Iran behind them. And by the way, they won't have Hamas and Hezbollah behind them either. So that is all these are again amazing events. I want to add one other thing. I don't know if you were planning on talking about this, but about America's relationship with Europe over this. I was deeply moved by President Trump's decision to cut off trade with Spain.
Yes,
it's about time. It's about time.
I regret every dollar I spent there last year.
Shame. They should move the naval base out of Rota, Spain. Move it out.
I agree. And no cruise ship should dock there. I have two big questions, Michael. I don't know how much time I have. If I can, I'll take you during the break and into the next segment.
I'll keep it short.
Yeah. Okay. Here are the two questions. One, Gaza is not off the table yet. It's the open sore. It's the open wound. And then two, Netanyahu. You know him, you've worked with him, you've worked against him, you've commented on him. Mm-hmm. Could anyone else have led Israel through these last 30 months?
Let me start with Gaza. Gaza on the table. I think that Gaza was one of the reasons that the Iranian leadership felt that they could rebuild their ballistic missile system and begin their nuclear system, because the Trump administration hadn't moved on its promise to dismantle Hamas. And in the Middle East, that was perceived as a lack of willpower, a lack of resolve. And that has to be done. That has to be done. They have to be dismantled. I was talking to a Palestinian colleague of mine in Washington today, a person very well informed, saying that Hamas thinks that it basically won the war. It's emerged from the tunnels, and it still has its guns, and they think they're going to be part of the post-war arrangement. We have to disabuse them of that. It's extremely, extremely important for regional and global security. As for Netanyahu, I was talking to another friend who suffers from Netanyahu derangement. If we have inclement weather here, it's because of Netanyahu. And he had to admit, I'm serious. If it rains, it's Netanyahu. He had to admit that nobody else could have done this. That he was willing to forgive all of Netanyahu's, to put in his words, his fabulous personal flaws and foibles, because he has brought us to this moment. And no, can't imagine anybody could have done this other than these two leaders. By the way, it's not just Netanyahu; it's the Netanyahu-Trump combination, which as you know in diplomacy, and I've been a practicing diplomat. Diplomacy is 93% personal, and this war is the product of two leaders who understand each other, who respect one another, and have complete open relations with one another, and you see how that works.
As a historian, wouldn't you love the transcript of that 3-hour meeting? Wouldn't that be priceless?
Very much so. And I get to write the book about it too. That's the good news.
Oh, I can't wait for it. Dr. Michael Oren, follow him
Me
on
too.
X at Dr. Michael Oren. Come back and stay safe and your entire family, Michael. Be well. The headlines from the war today. Iran has elected a new, quote, supreme leader. It's the son of the now dead Ayatollah Khamenei. The only thing we don't know is whether this Ayatollah Khamenei is alive or not. There have been no pictures of him accepting the job. He may be living underground for a very long time. Also, Israel has destroyed a secret nuclear facility. It appears as though there are no secrets in Iran that Israel doesn't know about, and we probably don't know. And our B-52s are now engaged in the bombing. Again, I'm not counting on an air campaign to bring about a regime collapse. I do think it can effectively destroy the fighting power of the Iran army and IRGC. More to come. I want to play for you what President Trump said to German Chancellor Merz and reporters today about our, quote, allies, England and Spain, cut number.
Some of the European nations have been helpful and some haven't. And I'm, very surprised. Germany's been great. He's been terrific. Others have been very good, terrific. I think that the head of NATO, Mark, is fantastic. Okay, Mark Rutte. I think he's fantastic. But some of the European, like Spain, has been terrible. In fact, I told Scott to cut off all dealings with Spain. Spain, first of all, it started when every European nation, at my request, paid 5%, which they should be doing. And everybody was enthusiastic about it, Germany, everybody. And Spain didn't do it. And now Spain actually said that we can't use their bases, and that's all right. We could use their base if we want. We could just fly in and use it. Nobody's going to tell us not to use it, but we don't have to. But they were unfriendly, and so I told him we don't want to. Spain has absolutely nothing that we need other than great people. They have great people, but they don't have great leadership. And as you know, they were the only country that in NATO would not agree to go up to 5%. I don't think they would have agreed to go up to anything. They wanted to keep it at 2%, and they don't pay the 2%. So we're going to cut off all trade with Spain. We don't want anything to do with Spain.
Bingo. I regret, I was there last summer. I regret every dollar I spent there. Don't go, don't get off the cruise ship if you're there. I'm in the Relief Factor studio. I remind you I took it in hour one. I'm going through my dreaded overhead bin problem, but that's okay. I'm out tomorrow. Mark Davis will be in. I'm going to try and get an ART appointment tomorrow to work on this thing, whatever it is. But Relief Factor will work in the meantime. No bad effects from going up the implacable hill, even though I spent all of last week with my friend John Delaney and the people at Flagler College. Wonderful, wonderful people in St. Augustine, Florida. Fabulous time. Florida's flat, though. There are no implacable hills. The miles I got in were just simple. I think it's all downhill in Florida, basically. I walked on the sand, which is a little bit hard. But Relief Factor works on both coasts. I'm here to report that to you. Call 1-800, the number 4 and the word relief. 1-800-4RELIEF. Get a 3-week starter pack for $19.95. Or go to relieffactor.com. relieffactor.com. You will thank me, $19.95 for that 3-week starter pack, less than $1 a day at relieffactor.com. Some of you noticed I did not begin my normal Lenten campaign for Food for the Poor. And I didn't do that because yesterday was war top to bottom. And a lot of Salem hosts said maybe we shouldn't do the Food for the Poor campaign with a war going on. I think we can walk and chew gum. I think this audience knows that the needs of Central America, the most impoverished areas of the Caribbean, whether it's Haiti or the DR or some of the other islands, whether it is Guatemala, Nicaragua, all the places that Food for the Poor works, they provide rice, beans, and water, especially pure, clean water. And every Lent, because it's almsgiving time, you can give to your church, and of course I always recommend that. But I also recommend a parachurch organization. Food for the Poor was begun as a Christian organization, Catholic organization, actually, many, many years ago, and then it added in all the Christian pastors of Central America and the Caribbean. Now it's one big operation with very low overhead and very effective delivery of life-saving water. Now, in this Lent, we are encouraged to make sacrifices, and some people give up candy, and some people give up beer, and some people give up pizza. Okay, great. Some of you go to church more often. You go to Stations of the Cross on Friday. Great. I think spiritual exercises are very important. But I also believe in almsgiving. And this is easy. Head over to the banner. It's a blue banner. Give Living Water at the top of HughHewitt.com. Or you can simply call 855-359-4673. Any amount of gift is available. You can give $5, you can give $50,000 via that banner. It's completely secure. All you have to do, 855-359-4673. 855-359-4673, or go to HughHewitt.com and find the Give Living Water banner at the top, and thank you. Byron York joins me from the Washington Examiner. Byron, political impacts of wars are very difficult to calculate at the beginning, even difficult in the middle. Often it takes decades. What's your first impression subject to revision as events unfold?
Well, my first impression was my impression right now is the same as it was the very minute I heard this was going on, which is if it succeeds, it'll be great politically for Trump. And if we're looking at some sort of descent into chaos, Iraq style, it'll be disastrous for Trump. I mean, everything 100% depends on the success of the mission.
All right, define success, Byron York.
I would define success as, first of all, decapitating the Iranian leadership, so we can put a check mark by that one. Second of all, destroying all of their offensive capabilities. We're close to putting a check mark by that one. Then allowing or creating some sort of stable government to arise in which Iran lives peacefully and does not seek to attack its neighbors.
Okay, that's Mount Everest. I'm going to use Syria as my comparison. I don't like this Shah guy at all. I'm not one to believe in Al-Qaeda transformation into the nice guy next door, but it's possible. Thus far, he got into one scrape with Israel and then backed down. He's fighting with the Kurds now. If Iran descends into kind of controlled chaos in various parts of the country at war with others, that's of no concern to me. If they haven't got ballistic missiles, that's a success, but it's not Mount Everest.
Well, and also they have no nuclear program. Right?
Correct.
I mean, they have no nuclear program and they have no ballistic missiles. Obviously, that would be progress. On the other hand, if it descends into chaos, what is the U.S. either responsibility or inclination to take part in this, or just sort of step back and let it descend into chaos?
Oh, Hugh Hewitt's view on that is zip, nada, nothing. I love the Persian people in Southern California. I think they could be great partners for peace, but we're not going to get involved with that because it's 92 million people. It's a bigger bite than Iraq.
Bob, I mean, you just went in and blew up the entire leadership.
And we blew up Karg Island's power supply, so they haven't got any revenue. So it does seem to me they're at a critical point where they may want to do what Delcy did in Venezuela, which is, hello, Donald Trump, what do you want me to do?
That would be reasonable. But on the other hand, if it does descend into some sort of chaos after these actions that we've just been discussing, the United States just blows it up and leaves, right?
Well, let's look at Libya, Byron. President Obama's famous leading from behind campaign, it led to nothing but tears. And it's still a civil war. It's still a pipeline of migrants crossing dangerously to Italy, many, many dying on the way. And Americans don't know much about Libya, and they care less. What about that result? That's chaos. We don't care.
Look, yes. My feeling is we certainly do not have to help every nation that cannot handle its own affairs. We do not have to help them do that. I will say, though, that when we are the ones who blew up the previous situation, we have some sort of responsibility in this. And that's why you have to really think about it before you go blow something up. because you realize if you know, for example, we did behead the leadership in Venezuela, but as you just suggested, we do seem to have a plan, and it does seem to be working at the moment.
Yeah, I thought you would mention,
so-
and you haven't. I do think the president has got to get oil back to $62 a barrel, which it was before the war began, because that's a direct impact on every American's pocketbook.
Yeah, I mean, if you're talking about domestic politics, I think the effect of the Iranian action has a much bigger downside for politically for Trump and Republicans than it does an upside. Because if things go fairly well, people don't care about foreign policy, and they still care about the cost of living. And remember, I went back and looked at some of the pieces I wrote. I think it was on December the 7th or 8th about Trump's pivot to the economy and to the cost of living. And he was going to go give speeches and travel around the country. And then within a few weeks, he does Venezuela. And that, completely consumes us all for a few minutes. And then, so then, he's going to come back. And then now he's gotten involved in Iran. I don't think there's a huge upside for this in the midterm elections.
All right, but Byron,
there's a
here's the
big
counter
downside.
case. The counter case is you are absolutely right about the electorate as a whole. Probably 5 to 10% care about national security, but they care a lot. It's, for me, the most important issue. And these two things, Venezuela and Iran, are big blows to Chicoms. The PRC is very upset today, and I think Trump's playing the great game with master's touch. But in June, when voters lock in their view, like they're voting in Texas today, and Cornyn and Paxton will go to a runoff, and it'll be the nastiest ever. But no one locks in their view till June, and then it's locked in, and it doesn't matter. That's my understanding of American history. Do you agree with me?
I do. I think, as a matter of fact, in certainly in studying some primary races and in general election races, you've seen the electorate pretty much lock in months and months and months before the election. If you remember, I was just looking back at the 2012 election today, and Barack Obama did a great job of basically nuking Mitt Romney before Romney really got started with his general election campaign. So that's how you do it. And I don't know what situation Iran is going to be in June, but this was not something. People didn't vote for this. When you asked voters,
I agree.
After 2024, why did you vote for Donald Trump? And nobody said that.
It's a nice way to move a marginal voter if you're in a close race and a close CD. But what matters a lot more is what you're paying at the gas pump. So drill, baby, drill, America, because that's what America needs. Byron York can be followed on at President Trump in the Oval Office today, talking with German Chancellor Schroeder, and he had a great deal of interesting things. Merz, I said Schroeder. Schroeder was the bad guy from 12 years ago. Merz. Here's what he had to say about why there was urgency right now. Cut number 6.
Something had to be done, and it's been 47 years. They've been killing people all over the world for a long time. They were the kings and fathers of the roadside bomb. Soleimani, we killed him last term. If we didn't, I think it might be a different story today. They would have been much stronger and smarter than they are. But they did the roadside bombs. 95% of the people lost their legs, arms, had their face wiped out, just wiped out. I've seen some young people that it's so sad to watch. And that was almost all, 95% comes from Iran and with Soleimani. Soleimani loved his favorite weapon. He loved the roadside bomb. And when you see people walking around with no legs and no arms and a face that's been blown to hell, these people, what they have to go and the way they have to live, this is Iran. When you look at
Iran.
the
Now,
barracks,
meanwhile,
the
his
famous
principal envoy with Jared Kushner was Steve Witkoff. Steve Witkoff went 3 times to the table with the sweet talking, full of you know what, Iranian foreign minister Special Envoy Witkoff took to the airwaves today on Fox News last night with Sean Hannity and said this, cut number 12.
In that first meeting, both the Iranian negotiators said to us directly, with no shame, that they controlled 460 kilograms of 60%, and they're aware that that could make 11 nuclear bombs, and that was the beginning of their negotiating stance. So they were proud of it. They were proud that they had evaded all sorts of oversight protocols to get to a place where they could deliver 11 nuclear bombs.
Boy, do not bring a knife to a gunfight. We got this uranium and it's enriched over here. In another 4 years, we could have a nuke. Yeah, that's not a good strategy. And I believe Witkoff. I think Witkoff's done an amazing job. Stay tuned. Coming up, Haviv Rettig-Gur joins me from Israel for an update on all things Israel. Do want to remind you my Food for the Poor campaign is underway. I'm not playing you the actuals that I normally do during Lent. I have been doing this for more than a decade during Lent because it makes it easy for you to avail yourself of the opportunity to give alms to people who need it. Food for the Poor has been working in Central America and the Caribbean to deliver pure, clean, safe water and food to the people who are most devastated by all sorts of disruptions up and down Central America and the islands. The banner is at the top of HughHewitt.com. That's the one easiest way to give is go to HughHewitt.com. You can also call 855-359-4673. 855-359-4673. 855-359-4673. As promised, I'm pleased to welcome back to the program Haviv Rettig-Gur, Chief Middle East Correspondent for the Free Press. He's also the host of Ask Haviv Anything. You should join his Patreon community because that's also an additional wonderful advantage to people who find Haviv to have a unique and important perspective. Haviv, first I want to start with my congratulations on your podcast, episode 94, on the grand strategy as China sees this war. I don't know that anyone else had done that yet. What inspired you to take a look at things from China's perspective?
I interviewed an expert who runs a for-profit business risk shop that deals with these issues, Melissa Chen, I don't know, 5 episodes ago, something like that. And she opened my eyes to the sheer scale. Now, this is something that, you know how you can learn a lot of facts about a topic over many years, but nobody ever puts them in the right order for you, so you don't actually see the picture, what's actually happening? She did that for me on China. The extent to which Iran is a second front for China, the extent to which China's energy choke points. China is a country that uses 15 million barrels of oil a day, so it's the 4th biggest oil producer in the world, but it can't possibly produce as much as it actually needs for its economy not to collapse or not to slow down dramatically. If it ever wants to replace the American-led world order, which it officially wants, its official geostrategic goal, it's going to have to create massive energy supplies. Iran is 15% of its energy, and it built out for it a 1.2 billion barrel energy stockpile that allows China, if America ever has to choke off all of the sea lanes to China because there's a full-on war over Taiwan, for example, gives China 100 days breathing room of oil. So for China, Iran is strategic, and China has been upgrading, literally in the last 2 years, Iran's missile arsenal to include a kind of missile that can reach Mach 3 and hit the American ships in the Persian Gulf and actually seal off the Persian Gulf and create a second front and tie down half the American Navy in case of an actual war with China. What the Trump administration is doing here, I'll just finish, sorry it's going on, but what the Trump administration is doing here is knocking out the second front China is building for that possible future confrontation. That's the issue. That's what's going on, and I learned that from her. And once, by the way, you see it everywhere. There are good people writing this stuff. Politico just published a whole piece with 5 fascinating charts about Chinese oil and Iranian oil, Chinese dependence on it, how much Iran is dependent on China purchasing that oil because it's sanctioned oil. And by the way, you then understand Venezuela differently because Venezuela is one of the 3 major sources for China's oil that is sanctioned by the US. It has an entire industry of refining oil that America has sanctioned, Russia, Venezuela, and Iran. So This is a big game on the biggest chessboard you could possibly play this game. And that will, if you understand that, you understand where this war could go and what it all means.
The China hawks in the United States, led by Senator Tom Cotton, who wrote this book, Seven Things You Can't Say About China, and Mike Gallagher, who used to run the Select Committee on China and went over to work for Palantir, they've been calling this out for a long time, but you did it concisely and you did it for a layman without needing a lot of background. You brought what was necessary. So now I want to use the China example from 75 years ago to put a question on your plate. 75 years ago, Harry Truman called General MacArthur from Korea to meet with him on Wake Island. I think the date was October 15th, 1950. And Truman and MacArthur congratulated each other on how well the Korean War was going. And don't worry, the Chi-Coms aren't coming in. At that moment, hundreds of thousands of PLA, quote, volunteers had been sent by Mao over the Yalu, and the war went back to where it began and stayed there for 3 long, bloody years. Is there a chance right now of an intervention, not by China, but by Turkey? Because yesterday I saw that Israel bombed along the Kurdish line in Iraq, Iran, suggesting maybe to the Iraqi Kurds they might want to go over. And if ever Erdogan was looking for a reason to use his million-man army, that's it. He does not want that to happen. Are we looking past a danger, Habib?
I can't imagine. I can't imagine doesn't mean Erdogan can't imagine. But I can't imagine that Erdogan would give up the great alliance with the US. One of the things we're learning in Iran, the world is learning in Iran, is that China's not going to come and fight for you when you actually face the American juggernaut. We're learning that Russia is not going to come and fight for you. And by the way, that it's S-400 missile defense, once the J-22, once the F-22s, the American F-22s move in with their electronic warfare package, there's nothing left of all of Russia's and China's great, electronic warfare story. We're learning that America is immensely powerful, vastly more advanced in all the technical ways than anyone else, and that these allies, these anti-American alliances, aren't worth a damn once you're actually on the ground fighting. And I think the world is watching that. And I think Turkey is watching that. If you're Turkey and you're calculating what's going on right now, you're going to step in against America right now. Turkey would like to get those F-35s back. It wants to move closer to America, not farther. So, no, I can't imagine they would do it. Is Erdogan capable of that level of folly? Possibly. He is slowly taking Turkey away from democracy and toward an Islamism that looks more like Iran than it does like what Turkey used to be. So maybe he's got that in him, but I don't think we're going to see it this time.
Okay, I want to move to a post that you put up this morning on X, Haviv. I'm quoting Haviv Rettig Gore now. The scale of Britain's fall from a consequential power to a feckless, aimless, self-abnegating chatterbox is truly astonishing. The font of democracy and mother of parliaments is no longer a beacon to anyone because it no longer believes in itself. It's a geopolitical tragedy. I discussed this with Senator Cotton and others yesterday. I agree with it. Do you see them reversing that fall? Because it's so precipitous and it's so alarming for the West. It has done more damage to NATO. Spain is sort of a subsidiary damager than anything that Ukraine has done to sort of arm the American isolationist wing, because Great Britain wasn't there when we needed them.
I'm a simple man. I don't understand the great complex vocabularies of the elites and the intellectuals and the academics. If you have 20,000 deployable troops all told and nothing more on this earth, if you can't hold the ground, defend with either missile defense or in any other way, the Persian Gulf, your own military bases in Cyprus when they're hit by Iranian missiles, if you can't exact a cost, vastly inferior economically power on this earth, which Britain cannot, it simply does not have the ships, it doesn't have the air force, it doesn't have the deployable troops to exact any kind of cost. I'm not talking about joining the American war. It can be opposed to this war. It literally can't exact a cost for being fired at. It has no capacity to do so. If you literally disarm, nothing else matters. And if you disarm because of a long-term ideology of an entire generation of your elites that says that you're a bad thing in this world, okay, It is what it is. They have to choose to wake up. They have to choose to stand up. They have to choose to build a military again. They have to choose to build out a GDP per capita that's significant. That's, for example, not behind Israel nowadays, which that's, kind of sad to see. I happen to be an Anglophile. My kids know my 6-year-old knows who Winston Churchill is. There is a great and glorious past here. There would not be democracies and parliaments without this English people or British people generally. The Scots contributed a lot. I don't want to get into their fights, but I'm just saying, I like these people and they don't like themselves, and that has made them totally inconsequential on the world stage. And when you look at this moment, nothing happened to them. And to exact a cost from Iran would be this tiny little thing, and they simply cannot do it even if they wanted to, and they don't want to. And so they're lost. They're gone. I just want to remind people, this is true of Europe generally, right? The German and British armies together are smaller than the Polish army today. That's the new world.
Let's pause right there. I'll come back with Haviv Rettig-Gur. I spoke with Haviv before the program, just before the program. I'm playing it now. I'm in the Relief Factor studio. I want to remind everyone that Relief Factor is the sponsor of the show, and every hour, sometimes in the first segment, sometimes in the second, sometimes at the end of the show, I spring it on you, which is the reminder to take your Relief Factor, especially if you're getting in the car for the afternoon commute home and you're driving, you listen on the radio. If you're watching on the Salem News Channel, I just held it up for you, and I took it in the first hour on the air. You were able to watch that. And it gets rid of the minor aches and pains that come with regular exercise. When you do something stupid like I did, which is to do something to my upper left arm with the dreaded overhead bin, that might take a little bit longer. But I double down when I do that because I carry curcumin, resveratrol, and omega work. They really do work. But you got to take them. You got to take them every day. The starter pack is $19.95. It's less than $1 a day. You take 3 packets of it a day for the first week, 2 packets a day for the second week, and then you're on the 1 packet a day a week program, a 1 packet a day every week program, unless you do something stupid like I did, in which case you up the dosage and hope for the best. Give it a shot. It is fabulous. I have been taking it for 13 years. It is the only supplement I've taken for more than 20 years. Call 1-800, the number 4, and the word relief to order your first trial. If you're suffering from something right now, something's bothering you right now, and call Relief Factor at 1-800, the number 4, and the word relief, or head to their website. You can find the starter pack for $19.95, less than $1 a day there, too, at relieffactor.com, relieffactor.com. Earlier today, I spoke with the Middle East correspondent for the Free Press, Haviv Rettig-Gur. You can follow him on X at Haviv Rettig-Gur. It's the only Patreon I subscribe to because I get the most from it. Here's part 2 of that interview.
We live in.
It's not true of frontline states. Israel's a frontline state. Ukraine is a frontline state. Poland is a frontline state. States that are, Japan is a frontline state. Taiwan, South Korea, the Philippines, to a lesser extent Australia, but they think of themselves as a frontline state against China. Frontline states are serious allies. People who are far enough away from the front lines get very, very frivolous. And Spain is the most frivolous of all. I'm so angry with Spain right now. I regret every dollar I've spent there and every trip I've taken there. A topic for another day. I want to turn to Lebanon because for the 4th time, I believe, Israel is engaging in a ground invasion in Lebanon after being attacked again by Hezbollah. It's just, it's righteous. Doesn't it always end in tears for Israel, or is this one where the Lebanon government's turn, at least in its rhetoric, may make a difference?
No, it doesn't end in tears. It didn't end in tears last time. The first Lebanon war ended in an 18-year military presence in Lebanon that then ran away overnight, right? That it was very much almost identical to America's Afghanistan experience.
Correct.
We didn't defeat the enemy that melted away into the civilian population. We stuck around far too long, sustained losses, vast expenditures, and then left. But our case is different from America because when we left, that was the lesson that the lesson that Hamas and Palestinian groups took from that Hezbollah capacity to kick us out, capacity just because we didn't know why we were spending more resources and blood in the place, took that lesson and basically blew up the peace process. I mean, they went in May of 2000, Barak pulls Israel out of Lebanon, and by September, you already have the beginning of massive waves of suicide bombings that demolished the peace process, killed well over 1,000 Israelis, quite a few of them children, and the Israeli left hasn't won an election since. So in our case, pulling out that way was a sign of terrible weakness. The 2006 war was a war in which Hezbollah's ability merely to survive. Lebanon faced tremendous demolition in that war, not on Gaza scale, but at the time it was quite significant of a scale. You know, Gaza a little bit reset sort of expectations in this region, but Lebanon really faced a terrible war, but Hezbollah was not removed from the chessboard completely, and therefore Hezbollah came out of it heroic. All of that changed on October 7 because the Israelis don't care anymore. The enemy that can and will do nothing but demolish their own polity in order to invade and murder us, that enemy is no longer a tolerable presence on our border. We went after Hezbollah with everything we know how to do. It is a total war, a war for the annihilation of this organization. That's where all the intelligence successes came from. You saw the pager operation, the ground war, the bombing campaigns. We don't ask permission. We're not polite about it. We don't care. They're coming to exterminate us. The only question is if they have the capability, and they'll never have the capability again. In the interim between the ceasefire signed last year and the current return to operations, because Hezbollah joined the war on Iran's side and launched massive rocket barrages at northern Israel yesterday, in the interim days, I think it was about 350 days, we continued to strike Hezbollah assets. We killed something like one Hezbollah fighter a day. About 350 have died in the ceasefire, and that's Israel's posture. It'll be never ending until Hezbollah actually lays down its arms and is actually gone. We should say the Lebanese government has told us that the Lebanese army swept through South Lebanon. There is no more Hezbollah presence in South Lebanon. Well, yesterday, a rocket barrage from South Lebanon hit Israel. So you can't trust the Lebanese government on this. Yesterday, we also saw the Lebanese government come out and announce Hezbollah is no longer legal. It is illegal for Hezbollah to have a military option, to have military capacity. It must, by Lebanese law, lay down its arms, and they even pretended to give some order to the Lebanese army to actually implement the decision. Well, it's very nice that they showed up and said what they should have said according to UN Security Council resolutions in 2006, but we also don't trust them to have the courage to do it. Lebanon does not have the courage to see through, to do the sacrifices that it'll take to give Lebanon a new day in which it's not a proxy arena of Iran's war on Israel. And so Israel's going to have to do it. And the new Israel is capable and willing. We're not going to get bogged down. We're just going to destroy Hezbollah. And if it takes forever, it's okay too.
Let me move to the fundamental question. Saeed Qutb came back from America armed with a revamped ideology for the Muslim Brotherhood, and it's never been the same since. I don't know how the Middle East ever gets to the new Middle East without a reformation of Islam of the sort that Bernard Lewis used to talk about when he was alive and was a guest on this program. As the Christian church needed a reformation, so does Islam need a reformation just to get rid of its crazies and its medievalism. Do you see any path to that in the aftermath of this shattering of the Middle East puzzle? And it's just been, the board's been turned over.
Yeah. I just interviewed, the episode's going to run either tomorrow or the next day, one of Israel's finest public intellectuals, a scholar of religion, who's written 7 best-selling books, named Micha Gudman. Excellent English, by the way. I think his mother's American. And he talks a lot about the Muslim world and Muslim philosophy. At university, I learned Maimonides, the greatest rabbi who ever lived, this deep philosopher in 12th century Cairo, from him. He was my Maimonides professor. And that was a moment when Jews went to the Muslims to learn philosophy. There was a different Muslim world. It was a different kind of Muslim world. We're talking about Aristotle was the most exciting thing for the elite. And then the Muslim world abandoned that path and went to a very different path and closed down and also became backward and poor and incompetent. And today you have both options on the table. You have countries that are phenomenally competent and modern and moderate. And by the way, socially conservative Muslim. For example, the Emiratis. Everybody knows that the Emiratis have a peace treaty with Israel, but it's not about Israel. The Emiratis have also taken their vast oil wealth and invested it in AI, which is I think the biggest, fastest growing industry in the Emirates and some double-digit percentage of their GDP at this point. They're modern. They have an economy that can withstand what is happening. Iran shot hundreds of missiles and rockets at the Emirates over the last 3 days, and the Emirates have shot them down at above 90% success rates. That is an Israeli scale missile defense architecture they built, by the way, by learning from Israel. This is a country that wants to be competent. The Muslim world, the Arab Muslim world, I don't know anything about Indonesia. It's a big place, the Muslim world, but the near Muslim world that we're familiar with here in Israel has a choice. It has examples of extraordinary successes and modernity and moderation, and it has Iran as a counterexample. The Muslim Brotherhood on the Sunni side and the Iranian Shia revolutionary ideology on the Shia side have destroyed everything they have ever touched. They will never do anything but destroy because they are nothing but a revolution against America. Can I just add one little thing?
Let's pause. Let's just add that one little thing in the next segment. Don't go anywhere, America. I'll be right back with part 3 of my interview with Haviv Rettig-Gur, and I'll post the rest of it over at Hugh Hewitt on my YouTube channel, but stay tuned to the Salem News Channel because what he's about to say is very important. Taped it right before the program today. Remind you as well, I have not forgotten our Food for the Poor Lenten campaign. I do it every year. I have a banner at the top of my website, Hugh Hewitt, that's pure water banner. You cannot miss it. No donation goes unloved and without great thanks. $5, $50, $500, $50,000. The website can handle it. It's completely secure. And Food for the Poor delivers aid to the poor. For your alms giving this Lent, go to the Food for the Poor banner at the top of HughHewitt.com. I was joined earlier today by Haviv Rettig-Gur, the Middle East correspondent for the Free Press and the host of Ask Haviv Anything, a podcast I never miss. Here's part 3 of that interview. Please.
Okay. There was an Israeli socialist, communist, public intellectual philosopher, thinker in the Mapam party, the very, very left-wing socialist party in the early days of the state that produced these extraordinary generals and leaders like Yigal Allon, who were very pro-American but deeply communist. And this is early Israel. Very pro-American and deeply communist at the same time. And this philosopher, Tabenkin, he goes to America in, I think it's 1960, and he visits New York for some meetings or some business engagements or something. And he writes a letter to Yigal Allon, who is by now a cabinet minister, I believe. Please don't hold me to the timelines, but he writes a letter to his best friend and important back home. And he says, how we were talking in the 50s or in the 40s about how capitalism is definitely going to collapse. And the letter is basically like, so I just been to Fifth Avenue and done some shopping. I'm not sure capitalism is going to I think capitalism might be here to stay. There was a sense among Israelis when they saw what America became after the war, coming out of the Great Depression, the success story, the safety and prosperity of a world led by America compared to the world led by Stalin. There was a sense that, this is proving itself. Forget ideology for a second. Forget isms. This is working and that's not. Saeed Qutb goes to America, sees the unbelievable success of America, and comes back more hateful of that success because what he sees in that America, in that success, is Islam's weakness and Islam's failure. And he interprets that as, well, therefore this great success story of America is something very bad and evil and materialistic, and it's okay if we back in Islam become more pious, geopolitically more powerful, become a conquering religion again because we're pious, but we don't have all of this, economic success or military. But he chose a path that is a path of resentment and blame. And those ideas are also borrowed from Soviet propaganda in the communist world. If you actually read Khomeini, the founder of this regime, and Khamenei, who is the dictator who led the Iranian regime for the last 35 years, it's unbelievable how much raw Maoism, raw communism, raw anti-Americanism is at the heart of their redefinition of Shiism. So it's really about blame. It's really about accountability. It's really about two kinds of cultural responses to modernity. And the Arab world has pieces of it, big pieces, dramatic pieces, that are choosing to do the best practices that everybody knows will bring success. And Iran is the biggest purveyor of the kind of old Stalinist failure that has to be brought down for everybody else to finally do success.
I was hopeful that MBZ, the ruler of the Emirates, was going to pass the baton to MBS, who would then carry on the modernization project for all of Middle Eastern Islam. That there was a rift. It was discussed well on your program. Do you think that rift is healing in rather rapid and extraordinary pace right now?
It's very healthy to give societies a choice. It's a very healthy thing. As long as somebody can refuse to make a choice without paying too high a cost in the short term for making a difficult choice, they will choose not to make a difficult choice. Iran is forcing a choice. You want to live in the Iranian Middle East? You're going to live in the Iranian Middle East, and you're going to deserve to live in the Iranian Middle East. Or we could bring that Middle East come crashing down and build a different Middle East, a Middle East where everybody is happier, healthier, more prosperous, and a little bit less at war with everybody. I think you understand that.
That brings me to the transition question, because then I'm going to go to Israeli-specific questions. What about President Trump is it that he gets about the Middle East that other American presidents haven't?
I don't know. You know him for decades. I watch him on TV occasionally. I mean, I don't have that kind of insight and access. I'll just say.
I've got to stop the interview. You listen to the rest of the interview. I'll post it over at YouTube. I don't know, and I told Habib in the interview, I don't know President Trump well. I've interviewed him, dozens of times. I've only been alone with him once, and it wasn't alone. Jared and Mark Meadows were there, so there were 4 people there. So for a meeting, that's it. I'm not a pal. I am very fortunate as a journalist to talk to him and get him on the air often enough and exchange messages with him, but not a friend, not a Trump seer, understander. I just follow the news, friends. I just want to make sure that that's very, very clear. Coming up, Mark Dubowitz, who is the CEO of the Foundation for the Defense of Democracies, 90 hours into the war. What's he think? Stay tuned. Mark Dubowitz is the CEO of the Foundation for the Defense of Democracies. Mark has spent decades alerting the West generally and the United States specifically to the dangers posed by the Islamic Republic of Iran. So I wanted to ask Mark this week, 90 hours, less than 90 hours into the war with Iran. First of all, are you feeling satisfaction, Mark, or trepidation about where we are right now?
Thanks, Hugh, for having me on. Look, Hugh, I think it's been an extraordinary military success so far by the United States and Israel. It's my job to always be concerned. I always expect the worst, and so I can be surprised on the upside rather than expecting the best and being severely disappointed on the downside. But I think the incredible ability of the U.S. and Israeli Air Force, the U.S. Navy, the joint operations, the integration, the fact that the United States is literally flying with not only an ally, but a peer. For the first time in our history, we actually have gone to war alongside a power that is not subordinate to us, but is capable of inflicting massive damage on our common enemy. And I think the Israeli Air Force has performed magnificently. The U.S. Air Force has performed magnificently. And the U.S. military in general has shown tremendous courage and unfortunately some sacrifice in confronting this enemy.
Now, Mark, my column for Fox News this morning, the headline telegraphs the concern, why Trump must finish what he started with Iran's regime. President Trump's most difficult decision is ahead, and it reviews the 1991 decision, much debated for 35 years, to end the first Gulf War after 100 hours. What do you think ought to be foremost in the mind of President Trump as he considers when to end the campaign?
So, Hugh, I mean, I've been a longtime advocate for over 22 years of bringing down the regime in Iran and replacing the Islamic Republic of Iran with a free and prosperous Iranian ally. But I think the president has defined and should continue to define his military capabilities or military mission as stripping Iran of its most dangerous capabilities, its nuclear, missile, military, repression, and terror capabilities. And I think that is what the United States and Israel are doing as we speak. I think they're doing severe damage to all those deadly capabilities. I don't think the president should define success as regime change for the military mission. What I mean by that is I think the next phase after the military mission is for the United States and Israel to work closely together, maybe with other allies, at using maximum pressure on the regime, maximum support for the Iranian people, and maximum fracturing of the support base of the regime to then advance the military mission to a broader goal of bringing down the Islamic Republic. But I don't think we can bring down the Islamic Republic from the air, but I think we can set the conditions so that the Iranian people can do as President Trump said and have this once-in-a-generation opportunity to take back their country.
Two more questions, Mark. It was reported earlier today that the United States and Israel are arming Kurds in Kurdistan within Iraq in order to arm Kurds within Iran's own Kurdistan. What do you think of that report and of that strategy, if it's correct?
Look, I think it makes a lot of sense to arm Iranians so that they can fight against this brutal regime, because what we saw in January is that hundreds of thousands of Iranians came to the streets without weapons and were slaughtered. 35,000 Iranians were killed. Maybe only in a 2-day period, there were probably 32,000 Iranians murdered. We can't have these people come to the streets without weapons and without other support. So I think it's important that we do give them the means to take the fight to the enemy. I'd be cautious. I wouldn't want to arm one ethnic group over another ethnic group and get into a situation where we're picking ethnic favorites. But the Kurds, no doubt, are very competent fighters. They are armed already. And the important thing for them to do and for others to do is to tie up the security services and tie up the IRGC so that the ability of the regime to then repress Iranians in major centers, the major 20 cities, let's say in Iran, has been severely diminished. And so I think they can play a very important role. I also think actually, look, the Kurds, the Azeris, the Baluchis, the Arabs are very proudly Iranian. The thing is, they're not proudly Islamic Republic. They hate the Islamic Republic that's brutally repressing them as well as all Iranians. But I do think they're proudly nationalistic and they're proud patriots. And we should make sure that all groups that are involved in this are committed to a sovereign Iran that doesn't splinter into separate entities.
All right, Mark, last question, 2 minutes. Turkey has been profoundly disappointing again, as they were in 2003 when they prevented our northern entry into the Iraq War. Spain has totally fallen on its face in the president's cut-off trade, and the United Kingdom is disappointed. What does it tell us about our allies, and what ought we to do in response?
Well, this is one of those defining moments where you find out who your allies are, you find out who your enemies are, and you find out who your frenemies are. I think the Turks are frenemies. They're not quite enemies yet, but they seem to be moving in that direction. Look, the Spanish and Brits supposedly are friends, but they've been obviously not only very unhelpful today, but in previous months and years, neither country has really stood up. I mean, the Brits are, they're inheritor of a special relationship that we've had with the UK for many, many years. But under Starmer's rule, this government is a pale shadow of the Churchill government or the governments of Margaret Thatcher. So hopefully we'll see regime change in the UK sometime soon and a British government committed to America.
Mark Dubowitz, and thank you for all the work you and the FDD, all of your colleagues, have been doing for many, many years, and especially in the last 2 years, to sort of prepare America for understanding that the threat was now and the action had to be taken. Follow him on X at @M.Dubowitz. Follow FDD on X @FDD. Listen to Jonathan Shanzer in the morning with the FDD Breakdown on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. And Mark hosts the Iran Breakdown often. And don't miss any episode of the Iran Breakdown. Come right back, America, for me to wrap up today's show. I want to remind you, over at HughHewitt.com, our Food for the Poor campaign is underway to bring you into the world of helping our Central American allies and friends combat poverty through the helping hand of Food for the Poor. They've been doing it for decades. Your money is well invested there. It is the season of almsgiving, and you could not find a better partner than Food for the Poor. The phone number is 855-359-4673. 855-359-4673. 855-359-4673. Or go to Hugh Hewitt and hit the banner at the top. President Trump in the Oval Office today talking with German Chancellor Schroeder, and he had a great deal of interesting things. Merz, I said Schroeder. Schroeder was the bad guy from 12 years ago. Merz. Here's what he had to say about why there was urgency right now. Cut number 6.
Something had to be done. And it's been 47 years. They've been killing people all over the world for a long time. They were the kings and fathers of the roadside bomb. Soleimani, we killed him last term. If we didn't, I think it might be a different story today. They would have been much stronger and smarter than they are. But they did the roadside bombs. 95% of the people lost their legs, arms, had their face wiped out, just wiped out. I've seen some young people that it's so sad to watch. And that was almost all, 95% comes from Iran and was Soleimani. Soleimani loved it, his favorite weapon. He loved the roadside bomb. And when you see people walking around with no legs and no arms and a face that's been blown to hell, these people, what they have to go and the way they have to live, this is Iran. When you look at
Iran.
the
Now,
barracks,
meanwhile,
the
his
famous
principal envoy with Jared Kushner was Steve Witkoff. Steve Witkoff went 3 times to the table with the sweet talking, full of you know what, Iranian foreign minister. Special envoy Witkoff took to the airwaves today on Fox News last night with Sean Hannity and said this, cut number 12.
In that first meeting, both the Iranian negotiators said to us directly, with no shame, that they controlled 460 kilograms of 60%, and they're aware that that could make 11 nuclear bombs, and that was the beginning of their negotiating stance. So they were proud of it. They were proud that they had evaded all sorts of oversight protocols to get to a place where they could deliver 11 nuclear bombs.
Boy, do not bring a knife to a gunfight. We got this uranium and it's enriched over here. In another 4 years, we could have a nuke. Yeah, that's not a good strategy. And I believe Witkoff. I think Witkoff's done an amazing job. Stay tuned. Coming up, Haviv Rettig-Gur joins me from Israel for an update on all things Israel. Do want to remind you, my Food for the Poor campaign is underway. I'm not playing you the actuals that I normally do during Lent. I have been doing this for more than a decade during Lent because it makes it easy for you to avail yourself of the opportunity to give alms to people who need it. Food for the Poor has been working in Central America and the Caribbean to deliver pure, clean, safe water and food to the people who are most devastated by all sorts of disruptions up and down Central America and the islands. The banner is at the top of HughHewitt.com. That's the one easiest way to give is go to HughHewitt.com. You can also call 855-359-4673. 855-359-4673. 855-359-4673.